Middle of the country, but not middle of the road opinions. It's the podcast dedicated to sports in the air capital of the world.
I'm going to Wichita.
Wichita, Kansas, and beyond. With Tommy Castor and Weston Mills, this is Keeper of the Games.
Hey, what's up? Welcome into Keeper of the Games. It is April 15th, 2020. We are on episode number 11. Hope you're having a great week so far. Along with Weston Mills, I'm Tommy Castor, doing this episode a day early. Typically, we drop episodes on either Mondays or Thursdays. This episode dropping on a Wednesday because, my wife's birthday, and we've got to celebrate the birthday. So we had to do it a little bit early. So Weston, thanks for being flexible and doing the show a little bit early with me this week.
Absolutely, man. That's pro husbanding 101 right there. So I get it, and that was a no-brainer for sure.
Yeah, I figured that we could adjust the show a little bit that way. I don't have to sleep on the couch for a while, so that's definitely a good plan for sure. I want to thank you guys for checking out the podcast and for following us on social media. Of course, you can always subscribe, download, and listen to the Keeper of the Games podcast on all major podcast platforms out there. We're talking iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, and others out there. And of course, you can always follow us on social media. You can follow us on Facebook and YouTube. You can watch full episodes there. Just search for Keeper of the Games on those platforms and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at KOGpod. That's at KOGpod. I think I got everything out of the way. Are you ready to get things going, Weston?
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing I'll add to that, though, is just like it's as we've slowly come along in our continuity with the podcast, our social media and those kind of things are kind of evolving too. We're getting a little bit better at getting clips out there, or you're going to see kind of our full video episodes are evolving as well. So be patient with us. They might be a little slow in the beginning, but we are slowly but surely figuring things out, just like we did with the podcast.
Yeah, constantly each episode trying to add a little bit more to the one that we did, prior to. So you'll probably be able to notice that this video episode on YouTube and Facebook looks a little bit different and maybe a little bit more polished than previous ones for sure. So the other thing I want to point out before we actually jump into our top story is a follow-up to our Finally Funny from the last episode where we talked about how the NBA and WNBA was teaming up with the ESPN to do a horse tournament. I actually tried to watch some of it. I said I would, and I lasted about 5 minutes. It was Chauncey Billups versus Trae Young, and I just couldn't do it. I'm sure you didn't watch any of it. I barely lasted like 30 seconds. It was awful.
Tommy, I didn't even know what happened until you just mentioned it right now. So although I did see in passing that Trae Young, I think, was the odds-on favorite to win it, I was following some sports betting stuff that had posted him as the favorite to win the whole thing.
And, I want to show a lot of grace because obviously we're in weird times with, not a lot of, sports going on right now. But the quality was bad. I mean, obviously they're shooting it with like iPhones and things like that. And it was, the videos were buffering from time to time. And so they'd put up a shot and then it would freeze and you would have no idea if the ball went in. So, some technical difficulties for sure. Just kind of makes you appreciate real life sports for sure. So why don't we go ahead and jump into our top story. And this also has to do with the times that we're living in today during the coronavirus COVID-19 global pandemic, and it relates back to the Kansas City Chiefs, that is Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. According to an article in the Kansas City Star, a doctor says that the Chiefs' Super Bowl win likely saved lives during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the whole reason for this has to do with large crowds and social distancing. Had there been a parade in San Francisco, if the 49ers had won the Super Bowl, there might have been, there would have been a huge parade, but there might have been a widespread transition of the COVID-19 virus. This is coming from Dr. Nijrar Segal. I think I totally butchered that name, but he's a professor of medicine at the University of California, San Francisco. And apparently, according to him, the Chiefs' comeback win may have been a gift for the city. Weston, I know you tweeted about it earlier today. Not only did the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, but they're saving lives at the same time. How about that?
Andy Reid for a better America, Tommy. Love the slogan. I've tweeted that so many times between now and the Super Bowl. Can't get enough of it. And I will say, so I went down to the parade, and it's kind of interesting. And looking back, I don't think really any of us in Kansas City were at all focused on, kind of what was going on with COVID-19 or, the coronavirus. And I don't think it really seemed like it was actually going to, come to us. Like nobody was thinking that any of what has now happened was going to happen then. But it was interesting because looking back, I mean, it really, even our Super Bowl parade wasn't as busy as I thought it would be. I mean, I guess I just am basing that off of the 2015 Royals World Series parade. And with that being said, I think probably a lot of it, more so than anybody thinking, oh gosh, this virus is coming, it was probably a lot more of, hey, 2015 was a nightmare getting in. I mean, it was a blast. I think everybody loved being there, but it was just a nightmare getting in and out of traffic, and everybody was jam-packed and you couldn't go to the bathroom. And then I think there was a lot of people that kind of pulled back from the parade because of that. So it wasn't even as packed. I mean, now granted, we were kind of up towards the front of Liberty Memorial Lawn, and it was definitely packed. So, I can imagine that how bad things could have been for San Francisco had everybody been trying to pack in there while there was actually a threat of transferring, because I'm sure the threat of transferring COVID, had it been in Kansas City, that wouldn't have been great, even in our, more spacious areas.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I mean, the bottom line is that, all of this happened prior to this, this pandemic exploding across the nation. And, this guy isn't just some schlub off the street. I mean, he's a doctor of medicine, professor of medicine, at a pretty major university. And so, he's saying in a presentation that essentially the fact that there wasn't a huge parade in San Francisco with, streets jammed packed with people, all across the city, or the parade route, probably saved a ton of lives. The stay-at-home order for San Francisco came into play on March 17th, and the city has only had 13 coronavirus-related deaths up to this point, which that number could have been, obviously significantly higher if the 49ers had won the Super Bowl for sure. I think it's kind of funny because that seems so long ago, with everything that's happened in the world today. I mean, this is, just over 2 months ago, from when the Chiefs came back, from behind, won the Super Bowl. We hadn't even started the podcast yet at that point, and then all of a sudden the world has just absolutely changed. And now we're not looking at the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl through the lens of sports. We're looking at the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl through the lens of, hey, maybe, all joking aside, they, the fact that they won might have saved some lives in San Francisco. I'm sure diehard 49er fans probably aren't going to see it that way. They're going to probably be, still be bitter about that loss. But, still, I mean, that there's some significance about this outside of the field of play and outside of just fandom in general. It comes into, global responsibility at that point too.
Yeah. So, and this is kind of the first, I mean, my father-in-law made a comment to me in passing about, man, can you imagine that this was during March Madness, if this would have stopped the Chiefs from winning a Super Bowl? And, and obviously that is, a small little blip of what's going on to think about something like that. This story, this article that was in the Kansas City Star, and I think it's been published a couple other places, was really the first kind of connection I've even really had with, the COVID and the pandemic that's going on with the Chiefs Super Bowl run, just because you're right. It just seems so long ago that they won the Super Bowl. The only other connection that I've heard between the Chiefs and the COVID or whatever, there was, I think, right when this all started going on and social distancing was put in place, there was the joke going around that if you want to figure out what is 6 feet, just picture Richard Sherman covering a Chiefs wide receiver, and that's about 6 feet. But that's
pretty good. I also saw a joke that, I also saw a joke that talked about how, the U.S. was so far behind on testing, almost to the point to where it was about time to put Patrick Mahomes in to come back. I also heard, that joke going on too. But again, in all seriousness, I think it adds, a little bit of significance. I mean, I think it's something that when this is all said and done and life is back to normal, you can look back on and you can say, hey, not only was it an epic Super Bowl, especially if you're a Chiefs fan, but based off of the situation that played out, potentially save some lives, in the Bay Area for sure. I want to point out one more thing too, based off of what you were talking about before. I haven't gone to any of the championship parades in Kansas City like you have, but I remember seeing pictures and reading, when the Royals won, of cars just being abandoned on the freeway. people walking, and, things were so nutty, up there when the Royals won. And, I think about kind of what you mentioned about, had that been the first championship, had we been doing that, this most recent time, it would have been chaos, but also there would have been a higher, probability of transmission, I'm guessing, so the fact that Kansas City had experienced a championship once before, kind of knew how to plan for these huge crowds.
Right.
Maybe that helped a little bit too. You never know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they did a lot better job this time around rolling out porta potties and plans and not letting people park as close, so that kind of spread out the parking as a whole. I'm pretty sure from what I've read and just kind of looking back on where Kansas City was at with all the COVID and coronavirus stuff, I don't think that there were any reported cases at the time. But as throughout this process, we've seen speculation of, oh, hey, there might have been a group of people that were asymptomatic at that time. I know they've been talking about that. And even in California, hey, did this actually hit California they were talking about December. With a lot of asymptomatic folks or folks that were getting misdiagnosed. And it was really the first spot, which is why now when you look at the numbers, they're doing so much better. So, it would be interesting to see if at all that played into, but it doesn't seem like the Chiefs parade really had any factor on what's going on now.
Yeah, there are so many unknowns, and not to get totally, sidetracked, away from sports onto coronavirus, but obviously that's the lens in which we're viewing everything these days. There are so many unknowns still to this day, and we're over a month in, and there's going to be unknowns for a long time. So I think retrospectively looking at these things, once everything gets back to normal, or however, close to normal, they can get when this is all said and done, there's going to be, I think, a lot more stories coming out, kind of like this one, like, hey, if X had happened, then Y might have happened, or, because X didn't happen, Y didn't happen, and so I think there's going to be this cause and effect type thing that we're going to be looking at, whether it's through sports or elsewhere. I mean, a lot of what ifs, the fact that, we talked a lot about the NCAA tournament. And at the time, I think you and I were both like, it's crazy that the whole tournament's being canceled. Why don't they just postpone it and come back later? Well, that's one area where we could have, very easily a year from now look back on and been like, man, because that didn't happen, now we know that these potential lives were saved, or whatever that situation is. So it's interesting that this is kind of the first huge major event that had taken place, but taken place in a different location that potentially saved lives. And it just so happened that it had to do with our Kansas City Chiefs winning the big one, which is pretty incredible. I mean, it just, adds, again, a little bit more significance to that win. I didn't know it could be any more special than it already is.
Super Bowl champs. I'm more than happy to talk about the Chiefs being Super Bowl champ on any and every episode in which it applies. So sign me up for that.
Yeah, we ought to just mention them even when it doesn't apply.
Hey, in for that too.
All right, moving on to another topic about football, but we're talking about college football now, and that has to do with the University of Kansas and the University of Missouri. Now, we all know about the border war, the border showdown, the hatred, the intense hatred between these two institutions, and it's not anything new that Kansas and Missouri have reignited their feud and their rivalry on the hardwood. A basketball series has been signed to be played. That was announced several months ago. But a lot of people were wondering what was going to be happening on the football field as well. According to Power Mizzou's Gabe DeArmond, a report from him, a renewal of the border war on the gridiron may soon be happening. So according to Gabe DeArmond, he was able to acquire an email from Missouri Athletic Director Jim Sturk, where he told donors via email that a 4-game football series between Kansas and Missouri is being contracted as of this writing. Now, I alluded to it a little bit on Twitter when this news came out, and so I'm not going to hide it anymore. I think this is an absolutely terrible, terrible idea. I think it's awful, but I know, Weston, you think it's a great idea. So I think we're going to go counterpoint here a little bit, and this might be the main debate on our show for this episode. I'll let you go first. Why is this such a great idea for the University of Kansas, the University of Missouri, and their fans to renew the football rivalry?
Well, I want to go back to something you kind of said in your introduction to this little segment or topic, Tommy. You said, we all know about the border war and the hatred between the two teams, but I want to stop right there. Do we? because I feel like the kids that are now in college or fresh out of college or high school kids that are about to be in college, do they even really remember the KU versus Mizzou rivalry? Like, I feel like a lot of the kids are growing up, and especially in the Wichita area where, you're not exposed to folks from Kansas City, where, you may have half the city that's Mizzou fans, half the city that's KU fans. They're growing up now, and it's just Kansas State. I guess that's, the rivalry now. They don't even really remember. I mean, the last time KU played Mizzou was 2012, so we're 8 years out. Well, in basketball, I guess I'm not sure about other sports.
2011 was the last time football played.
Okay, 2011 for football, 2012 for basketball. So we're 8 years out from KU Mizzou even being a thing. So that's, you talk about how many, groups of kids that have come and gone through Kansas that didn't even know that rivalry. So I'm excited that it's back because it goes deep. It runs way deeper than Kansas State, or whatever other, rivalry you want to try to fabricate. KU, Iowa State. I mean, there's just nothing else there. It's the truest, oldest rivalry in KU's history, and probably for Mizzou. I'm assuming they don't have anybody else that goes that deep. And then here's where I'm assuming our argument is going to transition, because also I think, as far as it comes from football, what does KU have to lose? They've got a non-con on the schedule now for the next 4 years that can be chalked up to a good win. If they lose that game, it's a game they're supposed to lose probably anyways. They win that game, they just beat an SEC team to kind of pad that record, but towards a potential bowl, because that's what Les Miles is brought in to do.
You said so many things there that I absolutely disagree with. That it's going to take me a while to unpack all of it. First things first, as far as the younger generation remembering this rivalry, number one, why does it matter? I mean, the rivalry went for so long, and I think it's pretty clear to say that Kansas fans hate Missouri fans hate Kansas fans, back and forth. That's never going to change, regardless if there's a series in any sport. There's still, venom being spewed by both sides today on social media. And like you mentioned, these teams haven't played in 8 or 9 years, depending on whether it's basketball or football. So why does it matter to renew a rivalry? I guess in my opinion, you can still have hatred based on history from a team than necessarily having to go out and play them necessarily. I think is part of it. The other part too that I want to say, as far as rivalries as they stand right now, is really Kansas State has sort of filled that role, in my opinion, probably not to the level of Missouri, but at the same time, I think if you talk to a majority of Wildcats, they're going to hate Jayhawks and vice versa. So you've kind of filled that gap in a little bit. The other thing is that I believe that it's important, at least for basketball. I'm thinking just certainly right now through the lens of basketball. Why solely the reminder of the way that this rivalry ended in the first place? If you're a Kansas fan, you go back to the final game in Allen Fieldhouse, the Thomas Robinson block, KU coming from behind, knocking off Missouri, the final time the border war was played, between these two teams in Fog Allen Fieldhouse. Huge win, signature win, great way to end the regular season for Kansas. Why do you need to revive that? It ended on a perfect note. My wife always likes to say, sometimes there's romance in sports. And I think in that moment, there was absolute romance to the point to where you don't need to relive it. You don't need to bring it back up and try to bring it back from the dead. At the end of the day, I always go, and I've mentioned this on multiple episodes, I always go back to the financial implications. That's all it has to do with it. It's selling tickets, it's selling merch. It's getting corporate sponsors on board on both sides. There's a lot of money to be made for both Kansas and Missouri. That's the only reason why this is going on. It's not about a rivalry or resuming, something like that. It's literally about how can we make the most money possible.
All right, Tommy, this argument's about to get a little personal. I think that your take on fans, Missouri and Kansas fans still going at each other is a little bit age blind. I think you're kind of locked into the group of folks and friends that are of your age that grew up with the KU-Mizzou rival, that were in college when the KU-Mizzou rival was going on. I know it's like, I mean, it might be fun for kids that are at the University of Kansas now to, try to beat Mizzou in a barstool bar contest or this or that. But end of the day, there's no stock in that. I don't think they care. They're not going to care about Mizzou, but there's no effect. There's no effect of Mizzou on them. It kind of brings it back and makes it real to me. Otherwise, it's just this mythical thing that you're taught. And what does that really mean? But, I think from a standpoint of at least from the football aspect, I think when you talk about KU playing Mizzou in basketball, I think there's kind of a different set of analysis you have to go through. But from a football standpoint, this is a program that, has struggled in the Big 12 and has their non-con pretty much for the last 8 years has been, putrid, and they've gotten beat by some of those putrid teams. So here's an opportunity where you give yourself a rivalry game, an opportunity to go beat someone that you might not normally otherwise be able to do. And that happens often in those rivalry games where emotions run higher, it runs a little bit deeper. I just think about even, every time KU basketball plays Kansas State in basketball, Kansas State 98% of the time should get beat by Kansas. But because it's that rivalry game, every single one is close. They always are competitive, and it's because of that rivalry game. This gives Kansas football that potentially that same opportunity with the rival to go in and get an SEC win every year, just because it's a rivalry game and it's going to be tense, it's going to be tight, or at least that's what you hope. I guess I would say, which is why I like it.
You had, again, so many things in your initial statement that I feel like are absolutely wrong that I even forgot to mention one of them. And that goes back to, when you basically said, what does Kansas have to lose? I think they have a lot to lose on both the football field and on the basketball court. First off, the basketball court's really easy. It's like playing a Kansas State. It's like playing a Wichita State, or like playing another team like that, where if you win, you're supposed to win. If you lose, it's the biggest thing in the world. That's the way so it's a lose-lose situation on the basketball court. I also think that the Jayhawks have a lot to lose playing Missouri in football as well. You talk about, hey, it could be a signature win and they struggle in the Big 12. They could, beat an SEC team. What's the goal of this program? Is the goal to beat an SEC team, or is the goal to go to a bowl game? And if the goal to go to a bowl game is the actual main priority, then it's okay to load up your non-conference with games that you think you can win, because all that matters is that you get the total number of wins that you need to make it to a bowl game. Even if you're only winning 6 games, if all your non-con games, if all 3 of them are relatively, I don't want to say easy, but relatively you feel confident you can win them, then really you need to focus on the Big 12. You need to focus on getting your non-con wins, not playing a Missouri team in the SEC that you're not going to win that game anyway. So chalk it up to a loss and chalk it up to another opportunity to miss out on a bowl game. Well, that's my reasoning behind saying that there's a lot to lose for Kansas and playing Missouri on the football field.
Okay, well, let me ask you this though: what do you think gets a Kansas football team more prepared to go on a run and win a few games in the Big 12? Beating Mizzou or losing to South Dakota State? And of course, even losing to Mizzou and losing to South Dakota State, I would even argue, really to demoralize your team by losing to, and granted, if you're losing to like a Southeast Missouri State or whoever was SEMO was it we played last year and won by, whatever it was, I don't even remember now. Of course, those kind of things hurt it, but at least with playing Mizzou gives you that opportunity for a big win in their minds prior to getting ready for a Big 12, because you're to play in a bowl game, you got to go, 500 in the Big 12. Maybe not necessarily, but that's a starting point.
This Kansas team lost to Coastal Carolina at home last year.
There you go. That's what I was.
Coastal Carolina at home last year.
Yeah.
I was at that game. It was the worst football game I've watched in person in my entire life.
Yeah.
And it was the level of play was so putrid that I was also at the Baylor game last season when they lost like 60-6. And that was a better game to watch than losing to Coastal Carolina 12-7. My whole point is this. I understand rivalry. I get the fact that it gets people's blood boiling and you can sell tickets and you can sell sponsorships and people are going to get fired up on social media and there's going to be a lot of hatred spewed back and forth between these two institutions. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What matters is for Kansas is getting to a bowl game, and you just need wins. It doesn't matter who it's coming from. You need to win all 3 of your non-conference games. So it's okay if you're playing teams like Coastal Carolina and not teams like Missouri and the SEC if you can get a win. Then you got to focus on the Big 12. You got to play, you got to win at least 3 games in the Big 12 if you want to go 6-6. So that's the bottom line. At its core, I don't hate the idea of playing Missouri. I wouldn't hate it nearly as much if this was a Kansas team that was a little bit of a better football team or a little bit of a higher caliber football team, where you could at least say, all right, they're going to play 5 times, and out of those 5 times, Kansas will definitely win once, maybe win a second time, and then everything else is a coin flip from there. That's not even the case right now. They're looking at signing, a 4-game series, and unless this Kansas team improves significantly, they're going to go 0-4 in this series. And that might end up on Old Takes Exposed on Twitter. They are going to go 0-4 in this series. It is not going to help them accomplish their goal of making it to a bowl game. It's just not.
See, and to me though, that's a scared mindset. It's just a bad take to make because you don't bring in Les Miles to assume that you're going to lose to Mizzou 4 years in a row. And I get that he's in his 1 year. You have not seen anything that would necessarily make you say, hey, I have every confidence in the world that in 4 years from now, they would be beating a team of Mizzou's caliber or greater. But I mean, you got to look at this from the perspective. I mean, because we're debating whether it was a good decision, right? So
right.
Kansas they can't make a decision based on, well, we've been bad and we don't want to lose to Mizzou 4 times. Like that's a loser.
Sure they can.
No, that's a loser mentality.
When you have 10 years of the worst football program in America, then yeah, you can absolutely make those decisions.
And you don't even waste money hiring Les Miles. You just continue on with the train wreck of coaching that you've had over the last 8 years. You don't waste any money on the program. That makes no sense.
Okay, so let me ask you this. I think we can probably both agree that at least in year 1 and probably year 2, Kansas is not going to compete with Missouri. I think we can probably agree with that, right? At least in year 1 and probably year 2.
I really don't even know if I believe that. I'm not saying I would bet on them to win, but to say that they won't even compete with him or that it's not realistic that they could win. I don't know that I agree with that. Mizzou's not.
Okay, so go with me on this. Let's just assume that they don't beat Missouri. Okay, just for the sake of this, let's just say that they don't. The goal is to go to a bowl game. That was made very clear when Jeff Long and Les Miles came into the picture. Kansas going to a bowl game. So let's just say, for the sake of this argument, they don't beat Missouri. So then you have to go find another Big 12 game to win. I'm having a hard time finding 3 Big 12 games they can win, much less a 4th that would replace the loss to Missouri. That's all I'm saying. So you have to compare it to the Big 12 slate. There's not, as it stands right now, 3 teams that Kansas can beat over the course of the season. There's just not. Now, maybe there will be in a couple of years, but right now there's not. And there sure as hell isn't a 4th one. That's my biggest issue with them signing a series with Missouri. It's not about this team winning football games, going to a bowl game and improving their program. It's about the notoriety around having a rivalry game with Missouri. That's all it is.
Well, I mean, but to me, and I guess I obviously disagree with you on the competitive standpoint, but I think that's okay too, right? I mean, we talked 2 episodes ago about, you suggested that there wasn't money in the athletic department to pay David Beatty's, separation agreement. And so now we're dogging on them for making a very financially savvy move that will help them get, to be able to get out of that lawsuit and then buy nicer equipment and then renovate the stadium and then bring in better recruits and then win more football games. That money is tied to winning.
I don't think you can make that correlation though. I mean, it's not a cause and effect. It's not they couldn't pay David Beatty, so now they're playing Missouri to make money. I mean, I don't think it's direct like that. I mean, I get what you're saying, but I don't know.
And I agree. But my point more is, I mean, it's just like I talk about, like when you talk about from a competitive standpoint, football, I've talked about this many times, not just on this podcast, but something I I hone all the time. When you're analyzing a football team, you can say, oh, their secondary is terrible. Well, it's a moving piece of, okay, well, yeah, the D-line, they're not getting to the pass rusher. So, it makes when they're not doing their job now, all of a sudden the linebackers are more focused on what's going on in front of them. Well, when they're freezing, the secondary can't do their job. So it's like when you're analyzing all these little pieces of a football team, defense, offense, whatever, every little piece factors into making that group as a whole better. Well, it's just, this is almost the same comparison here. The financials of the football team, when they can afford nicer locker room, upgrade that stadium, they've got nice jerseys, but get new jerseys, that's going to make that 18-year-old at that $6 million high school stadium in Texas go, okay, I like, this is a good facility, at least in comparison to what everybody else has. You can't be the low man out. So financials is in part plays into the success of all this. It's like a spinning circle. And sometimes you can't say, hey, we need to be at a better level before we do this thing that helps us down here, which is the finances. If that's truly the only thing this, signing up of Mizzou is, sometimes you got to just jump into the circle somewhere and say, hey, if right now all it's doing is giving us money, well, that hopefully is going to help everything else out.
I just, the only point I'll make, the final point from me, is that I just think the whole concept of rivalry games is overrated. I really do, just in general, nationwide. I mean, I'm not going to go out and say that they're not fun to watch, because sure they are. I just think it's overrated. I think the fact that, you're talking about 18, 19, 20-year-old kids that are, analysts and pundits are saying things like, oh yeah, the kids are going to, show up even more for their game against their rival. Maybe by the time they're a senior potentially, but freshman kids don't care about that, especially when it's a rivalry that hasn't been around for a while. You're trying to restart it. Like you mentioned, these kids don't know anything about Missouri at all. They just want to win football games. Yeah. That's all that matters. So let them go out and win football games, and don't put the pressure on them, especially within a program like Kansas. And you may say they're running scared, but especially with a program like Kansas that has struggled so mightily over the last decade, give them some winnable games. Get them out there. That will increase their confidence more so than losing to Missouri, even beating Missouri in the SEC. Give them some winnable games that will grow their confidence over the course of their non-conference season. That's all I'm saying.
I can agree with you on that point, at least about rivalry games. I mean, it's often more for the fans than it is for the players. I think we do, and it's a little bit different with basketball because it is a game that is a little bit more personal, if that makes sense. I mean, you only got 5 guys on the court. I mean, there's not a lot of equipment. You're physically seeing that guy with that guy, talking with that opponent the whole time, as opposed to football, like you're at pads and helmets. It's not quite as a personal game, I don't think. And so I definitely agree with that. But, I just think it's one of those things. I think it's good for, and maybe this is one of those things too, Tommy, where, it's different. I mean, I guess you grew up, with the Kansas-Mizzou rivalry, so I'm speaking a little bit out of turn here, but, in Wichita, right, no, and I agree. But I guess where I was going with that is up in Kansas City, it's still Kansas-Mizzou is all over the place because you have so many people living on the state line here. And I think there's a lot of excitement about having that back so that, neighbors are still jabbing each other. And that's where I think, when you talk about your point of, it's overrated for the players, and I can definitely agree with that. I will say my first ever Kansas basketball game was Kansas-Mizzou in 2009. Yeah, 2009, and it was incredible. So would definitely want the students to have those kind of experiences again. Not that I don't know that a football matchup would quite bring what KU Mizzou basketball does, but you hope that both programs are certainly trying to get to a place. So I think that
I've been to dozens of KU basketball and football games. I've never seen them play Missouri in person, and I don't really feel like I'm missing out on a whole lot. It'd be another game. I mean, I understand the appeal and the financials and everything around it. I just don't think it's the right strategy for this football program to take when you're trying to rebuild the program from the depths of where it was to where they're trying to get to. Moving on, we're going to stick with the University of Kansas and go more towards basketball with some news that I think everybody anticipated. We discussed it it on this podcast, but it's something that was made official just recently, just in the last 24 hours. Devon Dotson from Kansas deciding to enter the NBA draft and intending to stay in that draft, forego his final 2 years of eligibility. Weston, of course, we've talked about it. We've discussed it on this program. I'm sure we're not surprised at all, but your thoughts on Devon Dotson heading to the draft?
Yeah, I definitely think that was the expectation. I think he's going to be a great pro. I do think that really just in the last about 4 years, the NBA has kind of transitioned the game a little bit to open doors for someone like Devon Dotson, who might be a little bit, smaller than your typical point guard, or at least had been in the past. But, guys like Steph Curry, obviously Devontae Graham, who was tearing it up before the season got shut down, kind of has paved that model for a guy like Devon Dotson. And obviously his, ability on the court was, proven pretty strongly this year. I mean, he was averaging 18, had 4 assists, 4 rebounds a game before the season got shut down. And I'll add it. There was a pretty strong quote from Bill Self in an article that was on The Athletic. And it was just kind of about Devon Dotson as a whole. I think this might have been before he declared, though. But it's Bill Self said, I think that Devon Dotson had the best year of any point guard that we've ever had at his age. Nobody's had a better sophomore season than what Devon's had, which I think is a pretty strong endorsement from Self. I mean, obviously they had some great years from Frank Mason, Devontae Graham. Obviously Bill was there for Sharon, Mario Chalmers. But he's saying, hey, for a sophomore season, nobody did what Devon did. But, I think that kind of shows that he is ready to make this jump.
I'm really hopeful that, there's a team that will draft him a little bit earlier than what he's currently projected. I think he's projected right now to be number 31. And I get it. There are some question marks, his size and, things like that. But at the same time, the guy's quickness, his ability to attack off the dribble, his decision-making, his efficiency, things like that are the traits that are almost intangibles. I mean, obviously his quickness, is an athletic, feat by itself, but his decision-making, things like that, those are things that I think that set him apart for sure. And, I understand why he is projected right now in mock drafts where he is. I just would like to see him potentially be taken a little bit higher than that, because I think he can be of significant value to an NBA squad. You look at guys, I know you mentioned Frank Mason and Devontae Graham, they're guys that weren't drafted super high, even though they had stellar college careers. And, especially Devontae Graham right now was making a major impact before the season was postponed with the Hornets. So, I don't see anything different with a guy like Devon Dotson. I think he can come in and make an immediate impact on a squad.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think the thing that's funny about the NBA, really with Devon Dotson, where he gets drafted, the right fit is so important to making guys' careers early on, and it's like, I get what you're saying, like just for the sake of, hey, wanting it for him, making the money and all that, like you want him to go early, but really landing in that spot where, he's probably what's best for him right off the bat is probably landing somewhere where he can come off the bench and get good minutes. Because you don't want, I think with him, that perfect spot will be in between. You don't want him to get buried because then he can't grow his game in the NBA if he's just sitting at the back of a bench, good enough that he's not in the G League, but bad enough that he's not getting a lot of minutes on a solid squad. But you also don't necessarily, I don't think his game is going to be suited, at least not in the NBA, to go to a team where they're looking for him to, provide 18 and 4 every night. I don't know that that's necessarily what he's going to be early on, and sometimes that can stunt the growth of a young player. So I think going somewhere where he can probably, I think a fantastic fit for him, and maybe it's going to sound goofy, but towards the back end of the draft would be Golden State. I think getting the minutes behind Steph Curry would be perfect for him. Going into a game being surrounded by shooters, he's not looked at to do a lot. He's learning from one of the best young point guards in the game. I guess Steph's really not that young anymore, but one of the best point guards in the game, that could be a really good. And not that I'm suggesting that's where he'll go or seen any projections, but I think that'd be a place either there or a place like that would be a great fit for him.
Well, currently the NBA draft is scheduled to take place on June 25th, but obviously that could be up in the air depending on what's going on in the world with the coronavirus pandemic. But we'll have to wait and see where Devon Dotson will land in the draft, and best thoughts go out to him as he enters that process. Another Jayhawk player that there were question marks about in some circles about whether or not he would return to college is Ochai Agbaji. He announced in the last 24 hours that he will stay at the University of Kansas and play his junior season in Lawrence. You surprised by that, Weston? Did you think he was going to be back? Was there any doubt in your mind that he wouldn't be suiting up for the Jayhawks next season?
No, not even the slightest bit of doubt in my mind. Before I make this joke, I really, really like Ochai, but I'll go ahead and break the news that he'll also be back for his senior season. I'm not seeing it with him, and certainly he can take that step between junior year or between his now sophomore year and junior year, where he has a fantastic junior season. But the problem with Ochai is what he has provided over the last couple of years is a incredible athlete at 6 foot. He's at 6'5" frame, elite athleticism. But there are so many of those guys in the NBA. So I think you'd have to look to this year to really see a higher uptick in his 3-point percentage and probably scoring as a whole, I guess, before I even see him being a potential draft pick in the NBA.
He's one of those guys that looks like he could be an NBA player.
Right.
I mean, the athleticism that he has, when you look at him, he screams, hey, he could be in the NBA. He reminds me a little bit of like a Wayne Selden. He reminds me a little bit of like a Kelly Oubre, type body, kind of athleticism type guy. But he was pretty inconsistent, especially this last season. I think he could be drafted. I think he could be an NBA player. But I will tell you the one area that I was a little bit surprised about. I didn't think that he was going to get drafted, but I was a little bit surprised that with the new rules, he didn't declare, get some feedback, and then come back to college ultimately. I'm kind of surprised he didn't do that.
Yeah.
But maybe he had gotten the kind of feedback he needed without doing that and just decided, hey, I'm not even going to waste my time. I'm just going to come back to Lawrence.
Yeah, and I wonder too, though, especially with everything that's going on right now, kind of the advantage of, getting that feedback often is just that it circumvents the NCAA rules of when you can practice. So you basically can declare, work out with an agent, and basically get those, solo workouts. That's improvement. And, maybe probably right now is obviously not a great time for really anybody to be doing that. And, I don't know how much sports agencies would be holding back on that or not. I mean, obviously they're trying to make money, and probably, hey, if they've got a gym that will let them in and do it, they'll do it. But, it's maybe a little bit more limited to what clientele they're taking in for those private workouts right now.
Well, he certainly got an opportunity to step up and take over kind of a leadership role on this Jayhawks team coming up for his junior season. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. One Jayhawk leaving, the other one coming back to college. So those questions were answered within the last 24 hours. We're going to go ahead and segue into our Wichita Whiparound today. We're not talking about any actual sports teams in Wichita, but we are talking about sporting in Wichita as it relates to the COVID-19 pandemic happening all across the world. So as recently as a couple of weeks ago, when Sedgwick County and the City of Wichita issued their stay-at-home order, public golf courses were shuttered around the city. Private golf courses stayed open, but public courses owned by the city were closed. Well, just within the last 48 hours or so, the City of Wichita has decided to reopen 2 golf courses in Wichita, Auburn Hills on the west side of Wichita, and McDonald, kind of right in the heart of the city, reopen them with a bunch of safety precautions in place. Now, this decision was met with a lot of controversy from citizens all across Wichita. Some were saying it's ridiculous that these golf courses have reopened considering the risks that are at hand right now. Others are saying, hey, look, people are getting outside and getting exercise, and as long as they're practicing social distancing, it's totally okay. Others were even saying, how is going and playing golf considered essential, but I can't go to work right now, or I can't go see a movie or something like that? How come those activities are non-essential? So a lot of controversy around that. And we're going to talk a little bit about that drama, that controversy, and ultimately give our takes on the situation. So, Weston, your thoughts on the City of Wichita reopening 2 golf courses in the midst of a global pandemic?
Look, I think right now, as long as those kind of things can be done safely, giving folks an opportunity to step outside, get fresh air, have some sort of normalcy in their life, I think is a great thing as long as it can be done safely. And I'd looked through this article before, when you told me we were going to talk about this, because I hadn't actually seen anything about it. Looks like they're kind of going over, at least in my opinion, over the top with some of the safety procedures, which I'm saying that as a good thing. It looks like they're taking extra precaution and that they're going to do this. But, I just really think any opportunity we can give to folks right now to just have some sort of normalcy, if it can be done safely, I think it's a good thing. And I completely understand how someone might feel that, is deemed a non-essential employee and they're at home and not making money and how that could frustrate them. But to give even those folks, an opportunity to go out and be, have some sort of normalcy, even if it's for a 3-4 hour round of golf, I think it's a good thing.
I'm not sure you could find an activity that caters more to social distancing than playing golf. I mean, you are in a completely wide open area, and with the different precautions that are put in place, the fact that the clubhouses are closed, that nobody, or one person at a time can go into the clubhouses. It's not like anybody can buy any kind of concessions or merchandise. There's no cart rental, so you have to walk. You have to keep a distance from one another. You can't, be in groups greater than 4, and those 4 people have to stay apart from each other. Things like, taking the flag out of the hole. You can't do that. I mean, with these precautions in place, I can't imagine why there would be a significant risk. The argument that I can understand, though, is not about the risk of people contracting or spreading coronavirus by playing golf. The argument that I sympathize with are people saying, how is it fair that people can go out and play golf, but I can't go do X, Y, and Z? Or I'm stuck at home and I can't go to work, or the kids can't go to school. How is playing golf considered an official, business? And I think there's also a perception just all over the place that golf is kind of an elite sport anyway, so that this decision might be catering towards the elite folks by allowing them to go and play golf, which I think is a ridiculous argument. But I think that's a reason why some folks are up in arms about it. And I can sympathize with the fact that people are making sacrifices left and right and not being able to do the things they like to do, but golfers are still able to go out and play golf. I sympathize with that. I don't agree with it, but I sympathize with it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you saw down in Florida, the governor of Florida deemed the WWE is an essential business, and they will continue to shoot episodes of wrestling from their training facility down there.
Well, you gotta have that, right?
Yeah, but I mean, and it's one of those things. I think there's a lot of businesses out there, and I think golf is obviously going to be in the public eye because the entertainment involved, and it's was an article was run about it on the news, and it was closed and now it's open. But there's a lot of businesses that are open that are deemed essential that you could probably make plenty of arguments for. Well, why do we need to why do we need to have that, or why do they need to be doing that? This just happens to be entertainment where it's, there's plenty of folks who probably don't like that it's going on because they don't play golf anyway, so to them it's no advantage. But if you really picked through the businesses, I think there's plenty of that going on. Again, I'll just have to stick with my comment of any bit of normalcy we can have in a safe manner, I think is just great for everyone as a whole.
I agree with that. And, I do have to admit, full disclosure, I have played golf, since this whole pandemic started. I played at a private course here in the Wichita area that was still open before these public courses had even opened back up. The group that I was in maintained proper social distance the entire time. There were no issues. They had precautions in place as well. And at the end of the day, I felt so much better getting out of the house
Yeah.
and being able to get out into the sunshine and get some exercise, especially this time of year is really important. So, it's definitely controversial. And I think part of the other controversy is the fact that, and I've heard some comments about this, that Mayor Brandon Whipple from Wichita and the city council, they did not make this decision. It was actually made by the staff, the Parks and Recreation staff, or the leadership of that department made that decision and sent out the correspondence to the public saying it was happening without the mayor and city council knowing about it. And so there was a lot of controversy about that as well. But at the end of the day, I think I go back to what we've said from day one with all of this. You got to show people a lot of grace, and you got to be willing to make some concessions where possible. So that's where it stands right now. And so if you're a golfer in the Wichita area and you want to play Auburn Hills or McDonald Park, they're open. As of right now, they are open. Just make sure that you're taking the proper precautions for sure. That's going to do it for our Wichita Whip Around today. And our Finally Funny to wrap up the show goes back to the Kansas City Chiefs. We've got a couple of different Finally Funnies to talk about. We're going to start with Mecole Hardman from the Chiefs, who has engaged in a little bit of a feud with some folks like his teammate Patrick Mahomes and Des Bryant, as Mecole Hardman has said that he would take an all-star team of football players from Georgia and they would run all over an all-star team of players from Texas. Georgia versus Texas, Texas versus Georgia. I don't know. That's a pretty tough battle. Who do you think wins, Georgia or Texas in a team of all-stars?
So I actually didn't. I've seen some comments that his teammates have made since then, but I didn't actually see the original comment. Was he actually talking about players like from the University of Georgia versus the University of Texas, or he's just talking about high school players from the state?
From the state. He was saying, hey, give me a team of my guys from Georgia, that are NFL guys, and they would take down an all-star team from players that are from Texas.
Well, I'll just start right now and say, hey, Texas has got the Patrick Mahomes II, so I'm already riding with the Texas boys. But I mean, just from a population standpoint alone, I mean, Texas is known as probably the high school mecca of the United States, and aside from the talent coming out of there, or the perceived greatest amount of talent, they just also have more kids, period. So, you're going to just have a greater talent pool to select from. I think Mecole is really rattling some feathers with this one.
So basically this whole thing started, and I think folks who are watching this episode on YouTube can see this on the screen. This started with a conversation about Kyler Murray and how he might have been the best high school player ever. And Mike Evans responded, the receiver from the Buccaneers, responded and said that Texas high school football is the best and QB is the hardest position. So I guess Kyler Murray is the best high school football player ever. Mecole Hardman responded by saying Texas football is not the best. Then Des Bryant came back and said, love you, brother, but you are crazy. Texas by far has the best football ever. And then Mecole Hardman responded by saying, LOL, I'll take an all-star team from Georgia and beat an all-star team from Texas any day. And then it just kind of went on from there for sure. So, there have been several other folks that have jumped in on this. Quandre Diggs, who plays for the Seahawks, jumped in on it. And then, of course, Pat Mahomes retweeted his receiver, Mecole Hardman, and said, you sure, bro? Question mark. So obviously these players have a lot to do, right? Or not much to do right now, a lot of time on Twitter. And so now the argument is whether or not Texas or Georgia is best. For the record, I'm going to go with you. I'm going to say Texas takes down Georgia any day of the week, in my opinion. So I'm going to side with Pat Mahomes and the rest of the gang from Texas for sure. The other Finally Funny that I want to mention, that I want to talk about, has to do with Easter Sunday, which we just celebrated. And this has to do with the Chiefs as well, as Chiefs own Tanoh Kpassagnon. He decorated Easter eggs that looked like Big Red Andy Reid. You're the one that brought this to my attention. I didn't know this was going on. Maybe you can tell folks about this story.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's a whole lot more to it than that. Tanoh Kpassagnon, who is, if you're more of a casual Chiefs fan, he's number 92, plays defensive end, humongous human being, on Easter, tweeted out a picture of 3 different Andy Reid eggs that he had. It's kind of hard to tell. It almost looks like he did it in pencil, but it is a fantastic rendering of old Andy Reid, of old Big Red on the Easter egg, making 3 different facial expressions. We tweeted it out from the Keeper of the Games Twitter account, so definitely check out the pictures there. I thought it was very entertaining.
Yeah, I just pulled it up and I want to show it to folks who are watching this episode on YouTube. Yeah, I mean, I can certainly, now that we know it's Andy Reid, I can certainly tell it's Andy Reid for sure. That's some artistic ability right there from Tanoh Kpassagnon. I mean, that's not something that, I mean, that's just, I couldn't do that even on a piece of paper.
Right? It's good.
Much less an Easter egg. That's crazy. He might have another career as an artist and not just a football player for sure. That's pretty great.
I've listened to some interviews with Tanoh Kpassagnon. He's a very, very interesting and intelligent young man. I think he's probably got a career definitely after football. He's an interesting individual.
For sure. So we doubled up on our Finally Funny today with 2 stories regarding the Kansas City Chiefs. And that's going to bring us to the end of episode 11 for Keeper of the Games. Again, almost at our hour-long recording time for sure, which, really that's kind of, I think we're used to that by now. So We're probably going to stick with that for sure. By the way, before we wrap up, I want to remind folks how they can connect with us. Of course, subscribe and download so that way you get notified anytime there's a new episode dropping of Keeper of the Games. All you got to do is go to any of those platforms and hit the subscribe button. That way you're notified. And we're on platforms like iTunes and Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, and many others. So make sure that you do that for sure. And then, it might not be a bad idea, Weston, for you to tell folks again about some of the new social media that we've got going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're on Facebook. You can certainly search Keeper of the Games there. Right now, kind of what we've been doing is we'll post the full YouTube episodes there. We'll definitely be posting some clips and some other things here and there as well, but kind of the focus on getting the YouTube links and videos up there. And then, of course, the episodes are posted there as well. And then speaking of YouTube, we've also got the YouTube page. Again, just search Keeper of the Games. We'll have full episodes there. That's definitely a work in progress that we're really working on, kind of making it a little bit more of an interesting product than necessarily just watching us talk, which you could listen to on the podcast anyways. But for those of you who maybe prefer, YouTube is just easier, Facebook's just easier, great. We want you to be able to take in the podcast any way you can. So those are kind of the 2 things there. Of course, we're on Instagram at KOGpod, always working on getting some clips up there, trying to get those out a little bit more frequently. I haven't been doing a great job, but we're working on that. And then as always, you can follow us on Twitter at KOGpod. I'm at WMills94. Tommy?
You can follow me at Tweets from Tommy. So make sure to follow us on all of those platforms and stay up to date anytime there's a brand new episode. We'll be back with a new episode of Keeper of the Games. A lot more to talk about in the world of sports. So we'll make sure to do another episode soon. For Weston Mills. Oh, you had something else?
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add, if you're listening, if you didn't tune out already as we were going through all our stuff, so probably back to the normal schedule of next Thursday morning, we would drop the episode. That will be the day of day 1 of the draft. My intention is to give you guys a full, at least predictions on Kansas City's draft. We'll do the full coverage. I may drop somewhere a first round mock. It won't be discussed on the pod necessarily, other than for the Chiefs. But we'll try to work on that. So expect that to be on the way.
Yeah, we'll just go ahead and call the next episode the draft edition.
Love the draft
of Keeper of the Plains. So Keeper of the Game. So we'll be doing that next week for sure. So for Weston Mills, I'm Tommy Castor, and hope you have a great day.
Take care, guys.
You've been listening to Keeper of the Games with Tommy Castor and Weston Mills. Don't forget to subscribe, download, and listen on all major podcast platforms like iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and more. Find the podcast and videos on Facebook and YouTube at Keeper of the Games, and follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at KOGpod. That's KOGpod.